Welcome to the Heal Black Joy podcast. Hi, I'm Lola Troy, the host and curator of Heal Black Joy, the learning platform for our community to heal our Black joy with tangible and attainable programs for the mind, body, soul, relationships, and businesses. And in today's conversation this month, we are focusing on healing from valid traumas that we don't touch on often, but we experience all the time in our community. Financial trauma is the topic of tonight's conversation, and we are going to get into it with our very special guest. Her name is Patrice Bobo-Miles. She has been a force in the mortgage industry for the past 23 years. Her passion for empowering people through home ownership has fueled her latest project, Money Matters: Discovering and Navigating Through Your Money Trauma. She believes identifying your true relationship with money and uncovering your money story leads to financial health and a path to wealth. She has had her own story of financial trauma that we will discuss on tonight. She has been happily married for 33 years to the love of her life, Mike, and has been blessed with two beautiful, successful, and generous children, Aaron and Alyssa. Under the umbrella of her business, Bobo-Miles Collective LLC, she works with clients to teach responsible money management and credit, offering them the guidance and tools to become financially stable. So let's welcome our prosperity strategist and mentor, Patrice Bobo-Miles.
Hi,
Hi, lady.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Like adjusting my camera. I thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really excited to kind of get into this conversation.
I am so excited about talking to you about this particular subject matter, ma'am, because even though we go through all different types of trauma, we talk about our family trauma, relationship trauma, spiritual trauma. We don't talk about certain traumas. And I wanted to really capture that this month and talk about the things that we don't really talk about because it's kind of taboo. We're embarrassed about it. And financial trauma just happens to be the number one thing on that list.
I agree. It for your finance just to play such an integral role in your success, right? In giving you options and choices for how you choose to live your life.
Yeah.
Out in teaching finance, even in your home, it is one of those topics. Finance and money is just a topic that is so taboo, and we're doing a disservice to our children, and
Absolutely.
not teaching them
Yeah.
importance of responsible financial, habits.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into it. I know you've had your story. Everybody has their financial story, right? You have yours. I definitely have mine. Can you tell us about what happened in your financial story and how you began the work to help others with their money story?
I can. It's very interesting because obviously getting into this realm, I've had to go back and tell my money story. And the first time that I told my money story on a stage, I actually broke down in tears because
Wow.
there is so much emotion that is involved with that. And so I've been in the mortgage industry. Now it's going on, believe it or not, 25 years, which means I need to update my bio. But for 23 of those years, I've earned a really good six-figure income. And
Yeah.
the first 10 years that I was in the business, I had months where my net was probably over 20,000 a month. Which,
Wow.
for some people that do what I do, like, oh, that's not a whole lot. For other people, they're like, wow, that's a really good amount of money. And so much of it comes down to how hard do you really want to work? Let's be really clear.
Right. Right.
But for me and for our family, my husband has a W-2 job. The income was substantial for what we needed to do. I wasn't trying to. I didn't have to have all the money. I just
Right.
be able to have the money to have the choices we wanted. But what I've learned when the market crashed back in 2007, 2008, I do loans, I do mortgage loans for a living,
Mm-hmm.
and weren't buying houses.
Right.
Values were plummeting. Houses were going into foreclosure, and people were short selling. It was just a really different time in the industry. I mean, we had a complete, we had a complete financial meltdown,
Yeah.
and the industry was, I feel like, was dead center on what that crisis was. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
say that income was gone for me for a period of time, gone. Um, because I'm in sales, I've earned more money than my husband, several years in a row. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, I was out earning him quite a bit, just in doing what I'm doing. What I didn't realize when that income was gone is I didn't put money aside like I needed to. So we didn't, and I had a small emergency fund. It was a small emergency fund.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hadn't diversified my stock investments. I lost almost I lost about $500,000 in the stock market when that happened.
Yeah.
I had a lot of money. um, but we also got to a point, I am a spender. My husband is a saver. So when you talk about people being on total opposite ends of what your relationship with money is, we were on. I'm talking polar opposites. So I had credit cards, and I had debt, and I had run up debt. But I was paying the debt monthly. So I was like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. But when it's a
Right.
big, you don't have the money to pay for it. Um,
Right.
so all of a sudden, um, they're ready to put the house in foreclosure. I don't have any money coming in. And my husband, again, he had a good income, but what we were doing was we were living to some degree above our means at that point in time, right? And so there was just a whole lot of guilt on my part, a whole lot of shame. I was depressed. And then I'm like, what kind of example am I setting for my children? That was a whole lot of stuff to have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was at that point in time that I was like, girl, you got to get your stuff together, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it was hard. It was really hard. Fortunately, the house did not go into foreclosure. I worked really hard to make sure that didn't happen. And I pulled out of the industry for a couple of years. I was totally burnt out. Of course, I was rock bottom depression wise. So, my family was trying to deal with me, trying to heal that side of what was going on. My
Right.
being the support that he is, he's like, honey, we've got this. We've got this. We're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. But, we carry a whole lot of guilt. We put a whole lot on our shoulders. And while I recognized I wasn't in it by myself, I really felt like I was the catalyst to the issues that we were having because I had not been responsible in how I was managing the money that I was spending, the money that I was and was not saving, the amount of credit card debt that I had racked up. My husband's not a big credit card user. So
Mm-hmm.
all things, and you can hear that I still take the blame for where that situation was, right? Um,
Right.
Nothing wrong with looking at the things that you've done and be accountable to what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so as we got back on our feet and I got back into the industry, it was just a matter of you got to do things a little bit differently. We had
Mm-hmm.
kids. It was just a whole lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I recognized as we were getting back on our feet um, was that I still had a bad relationship with money. I was
Mm.
making some of the same mistakes, falling back into some of the bad habits, and I really just had to stop a minute and go, "What the hell are you doing?"
Mm.
And
So what do you attribute that to? Like
mm,
when you say bad habits, where did you learn these habits? What because we always like to go back to the origin of a thing, right? And I know for me, and I think I put this up on a post, like we learned our money story either from our parents, how we saw them, spend money, whether they were, excessively spending money or excessively hoarding and holding on to money where they didn't feel like they had enough. so they don't, use any money and everything is tight, and you feel stressed from that scenario, or the polar opposite, like you said you and your husband are. So what was that bad habit for you, or where did you learn that?
It's interesting. Of course, now looking back, my mom and dad have similar money story as my husband and I. My dad is a spender. My mom is not. She's the saver. And
Right.
so I watched that dynamic play out. And I'm going to be honest. I grew up in a well-to-do middle-class family. When I was 16, I got a car. I didn't have to worry about whether or not we were going to have school supplies, school clothes, where
Right.
I mean, we did well. If I wanted to go hang out with my friends, it's like, hey, can I have $20? We want to go. Sure.
Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
allow, so I didn't learn that side of things.
Right.
For me, money was not a scarcity. So there wasn't this scarcity mindset that you come in. But what I did have was I had this abundance mindset. And so my thought process was, we'll just find the money. We'll just,
Right.
you don't just find money. So we create money with credit cards. Don't have cash, a little short on cash, credit card, you
Yeah.
know, and just fell into some really bad habits there. Just always, because again, I'm in sales, so I want to make a little more money a month. I just have to close one or two more loans, right? Uh,
Right.
so so my mindset and my mentality there were, okay, well, I don't have it right now, but I know I'm gonna get it. So
You know
it's okay,
you don't get it.
right? So
Yeah.
that's what got me a whole heck of a lot of trouble.
I'm sure. And I know a lot of people like that. I come from a similar background where, middle class, my parents were educators, but the opposite was that my parents were savers.
Mhm.
Like they wanted to save everything. Like my mama was the layaway queen. She was not paying for everything up front. She would figure out how to get things done, but she was going to put it on layaway first.
Right,
And I want to say that I resented that, because I wanted, as a child, you want the thing that you want right then and there. And I knew she got that from her father. My grandfather was very good with money. He bought everything in cash, his houses, his cars, everything in cash. And he didn't even have a high school education. I don't even think he had a middle school education.
right.
Um, so I know she got some of that saving sensibility from him. But do you think that a lot of our community were born into financial trauma, like generational money
I was
trauma?
off that road. Absolutely. And here's the deal. You know, we were brought here from a different continent, right? As property.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so let's just put it out there. And so there were periods in time when there were very wealthy Black communities. We had Black Wall Street,
Yes.
had all of these things. And what has happened over the years is, as as we have made progress as people, some way or another, it always seems to get taken, right? We always seem to get pulled back for something, some new law. How many wealthy Black communities are, I don't know, buried under Central Park in New York, right?
Yeah, man.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about those areas, those neighborhoods, those Black Wall Street that was burned to the ground. Things that weren't discussed in our communities, most certainly, but weren't discussed at all. But those are ingrained injustices that put us in a scarcity, fearful mindset that our ancestors have carried forward from generation to generation to generation.
Yeah.
Um, and whether or not you agree with that it's perfectly fine, but you can look at what that pattern looks like, right? And then let's look at housing, where we had affluent Black communities that all of a sudden were redlined.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you own, it wasn't a smart place to put a business, even
Mm-hmm.
though, the population, we weren't criminals. It was a well-to-do area, and those areas fell into disarray, disrepair. right? And those property values plummeted. So we've seen this play over and over and over again, and how finances are dealt with in our community.
Yeah.
And that being the case, we are working from that scarcity mindset. You know,
We're
we're
working, we're not only working from it, but we are aligned and in tune with that scarcity mindset where it's just fear based.
Mhm.
Like a lot of times people won't take a step of faith or decide that they will just stay in a job that they know that they're just barely making ends meet. That's stressing them out, stressing their families out. Like just think about the pandemic, what happened during the
Right,
pandemic. There have been a lot of relationships that have been strained, that have been separated, that have been divorced, because now your money story has become blaringly obvious because everything shut down. You got to look at your bills. You have to see whether or not some people didn't have a job to go back to at that time. Just like, you know, the housing market crashed when you were talking about your story, and it puts people in disease where we're like, okay, my money story is now right here facing me. I gotta really face it
right,
because I don't have anywhere to go, and I gotta look at you, and we gotta discuss these bills.
right. Because we can't hide them anymore.
We can't hide them anymore. I think a lot of times people use money as a way and a means, just like they use food to get over things, or they use, you know, outside sources to get over and to avoid things that they don't necessarily want to deal with. So we'll just go on a shopping spree because we want to, you know, we want to feel good in the moment. It's like a real
Yeah,
shot and a dose of
yeah.
dopamine that's like, it's gonna make me feel good because I went on a shopping spree.
You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with, I was doing a discovery call with a client. We were trying to figure out if we'd be a good fit because, you know, not all coaches are going to fit with the people who call. I mean,
Right.
it is. So we were having this discovery call. And I said, you know, one of the things that I hate is to hear somebody say they need a little retail therapy because spending money to me, when you have an issue with how you manage your money, it's almost like an addiction, right? Because you know when you find that sale or you spend that this rush, you get this rush of happy, you know, happy endorphins and serotonin. It's like,
Right.
and so it's one of those kind of hard times to let go of in lieu of becoming responsible for managing what your finances look like. I am a firm believer. You know, everybody's like, it's the numbers, it's the numbers, it's the numbers. And I don't think people always want to look at what is the emotional attachment there. You know, are you spending from a place of fear? Um, are you doing better than your parents did? And maybe you don't feel like you deserve what it is that you've got because you're doing better than your parents. You
That's a
know,
big one, Patrice.
what
That's
is
a big one that you're talking about right now, because I know a lot of people, not just their family, but their friends, they will have this real heavy sense of guilt that they've done better than their friends, or that they've done better than their family members. And they will literally pull back and feel a sense of guilt because of it, because of their achievements.
right? And you know that's a tough one. And if you have grown, you've watched your parents struggle and struggle and struggle when it comes to finances and money. Your mindset is that it should be a struggle because that's all that you've seen, right? And so when the struggle's not there, what are the emotions that you're dealing with that look like that? And if the struggle's not there, what are you doing to create the struggle?
So you're attached to the money story of your childhood, which means that you feel like, in a sense, as an adult, you really should be struggling, even though financially you're not. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, to some degree I do. To some degree I am because again, unless family and you know, you give your kids an allowance and you teach them pay yourself first, put this much into to savings, put this much to something that you want to buy later, right? If you don't start teaching your kids these things, The only lessons you have are the ones that you watch or see as a kid, because that's where you're going to get, where do you get most of your first lessons? From home.
In
Right?
home.
From home. And then when you become an adult, you just kind of struggle through it unless you take the time to learn how to do it.
Yeah. Shout out to Jules J 1878. She says, or opposite, they build a facade as if they are doing better to appear to be better.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
that's another one too.
keeping up with the Joneses. And I've said this, and I'm gonna attach this to Black people. I have seen more. Yes, I'm going there.
I'll
I
go. I want you to go there. Yes, ma'am. Go there,
I
please.
more of us drive our wealth and wear our, as opposed to investing our money in ways that can help grow our money, to help us not only grow wealth, but possibly grow generational wealth. And then I'm going to take it a step further, because if you are at a place where you are trying to build that generational wealth, and that's the wealth you're going to pass on to your kids, right? If you're not teaching them how to manage what that is, then I have a friend who says everybody wants to sell grandma's house, right? Everybody wants to sell grandma's house. And what do you do with the money from grandma's house? Real estate is an asset. In most
Right.
cases, assets appreciate in value. So
Right.
if we're not teaching our children and our children's children how to manage their money and how to manage wealth, because with generational wealth, what you hope happens is that you've taught your children the lessons they need so that that wealth starts to grow. That money that they get starts to make its own money, right? And so we're not just talking generational wealth at that point in time, we're talking a legacy wealth.
Mm,
Go to our kids, if we teach them what it is they need to know, it's lessons that they can teach the generations that come behind us. And
yeah.
you, wealthy families, there's a lot of that happens.
Yeah. That keeping up with the Jones is so big in our community because like inspired by love too. Absolutely. People think because they have a nice car living in a home, feel they made it, but it's not taught. So it's like you acquire these things that are depreciating besides the home. Like your car is going to depreciate as soon as you drive it off a lot. But you're basically keeping up with the Joneses or trying to keep up with the Joneses. And it's a facade because, that bar moves depending
Mhm.
on what year it is, right? And so then you're like, oh, well, I got to go do this, or I got to I got to go to the moon because they went, to the stars. I got to go to the moon. So it's this cycle that we're in. We are the biggest consumers.
That part.
We're the biggest consumers. But what year is it where it seems that our wealth we won't have anything to show for it? I know like they've already kind of predicted that our community, we're not going to have anything to show for it in 20 whatever 50 55 whatever the year is. I don't know exactly the year. I have to get the number. That we will not have anything to show for it because we are spending, not saving, not
We're,
investing, not building generational wealth.
we have become the biggest consumers,
We have.
but we're not doing the things that we need to do to secure our futures. I'm a firm believer in having short-term financial goals, mid-term financial goals, and long-term financial goals. And I'm always amazed when I talk to younger people and, their company offers benefits, a 401k, and they're like, yeah, no, I don't put any money in my 401k. Well, do you have a Roth IRA? Do you have an IRA? Are you doing, no. So, what are we doing? You should have a minimum of 6 months money tucked away. And I mean 6 months to cover your expenses, 6 months, cover your house payment for 6 months. If you got a car payment, your utilities, make sure you can put food on your table. And I'm talking those needs that you have, right? And there is less than, I think it's 80% of Americans, just Americans, that have less than $1,000 in a savings account. And so what does that say about what it is that we're doing with our money? You know, yes, real estate's an investment. And yes, I started investing in real estate. But there are other things that you can do with your money. I know there are people who are into the crypto and the Bitcoin. I'm not one of those people. But there are people who are very interested in what that looks like. What do your bonds look like? What do your stocks look like? The stock market is a great way to invest. But the one thing about investing is that it's a long game. You can't put money into an investment and 3 years later expect to have this windfall, because everything is cyclical. We've watched the stock market bleed out for weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
One time where housing values were, people were so underwater in what their property values were versus what they owe on the property. But it's all cyclical. And so sometimes you just have to kind of put that money there and forget it's there and
Yeah.
let it cycles run. So, you gotta crawl before you walk. You gotta
Yeah.
walk and run. And for me, that crawling is learning how money works and how to set up and how to plan and strategize those goals and how to reach those goals at different milestones.
And I think it's super important that there are people like you that can mentor and coach people in that, because in our community, because a lot of us come from a poverty mindset or a poverty scarcity mindset when it comes to our money stories in our family, we can't learn that from them. You know what I'm saying? You got to learn, you have to master whatever you're trying to master from a master, someone who has mastered that particular topic, right? So you can't expect someone who taught you a scarcity mindset to turn around and teach you how to build generational wealth.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it any better than that. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're
I mean,
absolutely right.
like we go back and we're like, because we have the verbiage now to call a thing, we're now starting to unpack and peel back the layers of the onions of our life as we get to our age now, our tender age of what we are. And we start and we start unpacking the trauma of our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we get mad or upset with our families because of the things that they either taught us that were wrong, or just those traumas that we've dealt with coming from our family. We cannot go back to them and expect them to teach us something different when they taught us and we experienced the trauma through them.
Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer in everybody needs to have a therapist, a coach, and a mentor.
Yes.
Because the trauma is what it is. The bad habits are your reaction to what that trauma is. So what are your how do you recognize what they are, and what are the coping mechanisms to work through them, right? I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a certified financial advisor. And I definitely have to put that out there. But what I am is I am a survivor of money trauma. I tell people all the time, I'm a recovering credit card addict.
Mm.
I have to be and to this day, knowing what I know, I still have to be really careful with how I use credit cards, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. And again, I'm going to say this word, the addiction is what it is. And so I have to be I still have to be really, really careful. Like, I don't carry all of my credit cards in my wallet. And it's not like I have 20, because I don't, but I don't carry all my credit cards in my wallet.
Right.
Don't. Um, and when I get to a point that I feel like, I'm feeling a little stress, I have to go back and go, okay, let's put the plan in place so that I'm more comfortable with where we're going. Is
Right.
saving how I need to save? Are the bills being met? Are my needs being met? But more importantly, are my wants being met?
Mm.
Word budget, like they hate the word diet because it sounds so restrictive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you give your dollars a job, you can give your dollars the job for the things that you want. I get my every 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I get my hair done. I have money set aside so that if I want to go shopping, I go shopping. It's all part of what's in, my budget, my spending plan, whatever it is that makes you comfortable with that term. So
Right.
it's not stop living. I've just gotten smarter in how I am allocating what those funds look like.
Right. Let's talk about some of the financial traumas that, and there's so many. I saw a list of 16 money traumas, and I picked some out, and I wanted to get your thought process on them, because I know these particular ones are some that our community are affected by, and one of them is family financial trauma, in the sense where they haven't met the expectations of said family. Like if their beliefs are different, if their religious beliefs are different, or if their sexual preference is different, then your mom and your father will cut you off because, or let's say you are dating someone outside of your race and they cut you off because you decided to do something other than what they expected you to do.
Mm-hmm. That's using money as a weapon. That is weaponizing money. And honestly, I'm not a fan. I'm a firm believer in, you have to walk in what your truth is. My truth's not your truth, right? My
Right.
truth is Dad's truth, nor is it my sister's truth, but it is my truth. Um, and as hard as it is sometimes, you have to be brave enough, um, which basically means you have to be scared and do it anyway.
Right.
Be able to blaze what that path looks like for you. The sad thing, however, is that so many of us, and I mean us as us, people in general, I don't just
Mm-hmm.
mean everyone, is that if you've come to a place that you really depend on what that support is, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, whatever that support is, it's hard to forge your truth at points in time because you still don't want to lose what those relationships are and what they
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
go back to. What is that emotional attachment to what you're dealing with your finances?
Right. That's when the family is weaponizing and manipulating
Mm-hmm.
the relationship through money, which a lot of people are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was emotionally painful experience where money was involved, like the pandemic, job loss, divorce. I experienced that, where you lose, a whole half of your income. Or
Right.
actually, I'm gonna tell you my money story. I don't think
Okay.
I've ever told this story, but my family, my friends know it, and I don't have a problem sharing it. My first year of marriage, I'm gonna tell you what my first year of marriage was, and I'm no longer married, and this might be because of it. But I found out I was pregnant in 2001, the beginning of 2001. So me and my ex-husband, we said we're going to get married in September. Okay. One of my childhood best friends died a week before my wedding in April. My ex-husband's grandfather died a week after our wedding in May. He lost his job in June. I lost my job in July. September 11th happened. My daughter was born 11 days after September 11th. That was my first year of marriage with no parents here, no family support here. His parents were in California. My parents were in North Carolina. We had no family in Georgia. And that was traumatic on so many levels to
Yeah.
me. And I'm sure to him too. And I think it was so hard for us to try to climb out of the emotional and financial trauma. He found a job, but I couldn't buy a job during that time. So I stayed home with my daughter. And then when I decided to go back to work a year after that, which was it was sort of like how the pandemic was after September 11th.
Right.
There weren't a lot of jobs going around at that time. And We had 2 car notes. We were living in Alpharetta, Georgia, which was very extremely high,
Right.
to live. We almost lost everything,
Mm-hmm.
including ourselves with each other, right? And when I look back on it now, not only did we not have the financial tools to make it, we didn't have the emotional tools to communicate with one another, to talk through our bills.
Say that part again. The communication part.
We didn't have the emotional tools to talk to each other about our bills.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to everything else that was going on in the marriage. But finances is such an integral part, and it's probably the number one reason why people get divorced. And I will say, and I probably can admit this now, that was one of the reasons why we ended up in divorce.
Well, I can tell you there are people, again, with me, my husband, and our polar opposite. There was a point in time where we couldn't talk about money. And it was, I always felt like I was being put on the defensive. I was always so defensive, just so defensive. Um, and then, of course, it always ended up in some type of argument. We both worked. And so I truly had this mindset of, you can't tell me how to spend money. I'm working too, right? I'm working. I'm helping pay the bills. Why are you asking me how much these shoes cost, right? And again, I got married when I was young. I was 22. I was a baby, when I got married. And so it was a hard journey. And I will tell you, at 32, at 35 is when, and that's a long time to be married. Before, we really could sit down and figure things out. Your personal finances are personal. And so how you choose to navigate that arena individually and as a couple, it's your business. Right, stay out of my pockets. But it's your business. And so
right.
I don't have joint accounts. Now, the bills get paid because we're responsible for what has to happen. Everything gets, but it's easier because I come not hiding my purchases anymore. You ever remember hiding purchases from your spouse or your partner?
Oh yeah.
Because you don't want to hear it and you wait till they leave. Sorry, there go my dog. You take off the tags and hang it up and like it never happened. Yeah, So there's that's a level of infidelity. There were times I was like opening credit cards and having the bills sent to my parents' home. So my husband didn't know I had any credit card accounts. That's financial infidelity.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Hold up, Patrice. Did you say financial infidelity? I have never in my life heard that before.
Yes, ma'am. It was a financial infidelity. I betrayed what that trust was for the financial aspect of our marriage. And we had to build it back up. But I had a whole lot of proving myself to do. So yeah, it's it's a real thing.
That's big because I know there's so many different types of betrayal when it comes to relationships, and we don't talk about. This is why I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because we don't talk about that. I've never ever heard that put in that manner, but people do it all the time. Mm-hmm. There's the meme that goes around, or the stories, the videos that you see, reels, TikTok videos that go around where they're talking about how the woman, she gets her, her stuff from Amazon, and she's like, her husband is like, did you just get another package? No, like she's just completely oblivious. Like, no, who, me? I didn't get another package. I don't know whose package that is. But that's the joke. The joke is And it's really not a joke. It's actually very serious in the sense that that's financial infidelity.
Mm-hmm. And it's a broken trust.
Mm, mm,
It's trust. And you know, if your partner stepped out on you and, you know, got and then decided, oh, I've made this mistake, you know, you've got to decide as that partner, can I trust them not to do this again?
mm,
Rebuild what that initial trust was.
mm.
And know, you know, when I tell you, girl, when I tell you I've walked through it, I have walked through it. I mean,
Right.
financial infidelity, you know, we've walked through the whole loss of income. I've had just overwhelming feelings of guilt and disappointment and depression and frustration. You know, we've had to work through all of that. Look, this man has to really love me, okay?
Right. Right. And a
But
lot of times I think and thank God that you had a partner that was emotionally intelligent enough to be able to walk with you through that journey. Because a lot of times as partners, a lot of us don't have the grace that we won't give people grace in that, especially if their financial story is different from ours and they're either an overspender or even a hoarder of money. You don't have grace, and that's where you basically bang heads, you know, because your financial story is totally different and you don't really know how to talk about your finances, and that becomes such a huge issue in marriages and partnerships and relationships.
well, and there's also this level of responsibility and accountability that come into play. I mean, you know, people talk a whole lot about, oh, you know, and I can tell you, I've been on this journey, and to have to really look at the ugly side of what that was for me, you know, and where did I really screw up? What are my mistakes here?
Yeah.
Not only to visit it, you got to figure out why you're doing what you're doing. What are the catalysts that are causing these things?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a level of you have to forgive yourself. You've got to give yourself grace in
Yeah,
order to move forward and offer grace to someone else.
absolutely. Here's another financial trauma that some people are experiencing, and that's lack of achieving financial goals. Like they failed financially. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not where I should be financially at a certain age. So, you know, you have those mile markers. Oh, I'm at 50 and I should have X amount of dollars in the bank, or I should have, you know, a certain type of job, or I should have a certain level of comfort when it comes to being able to pay my bills. And a lot of people, especially Black women, are experiencing it. One, because we're not getting paid the same amount of money that others are getting paid in corporate America. We are not getting paid the same amount. We're just not. As women, we're definitely not. And as Black women, we're definitely not. What do you say to those women, or even our, you know, our Black, you know, our Black brothers who are feeling like they failed financially?
It's never too late to make a change, number one. Um, you've got to work with the cards that you're dealt. If we're paid less money as Black women, you know, right now, we are paid less money as Black women. If we are paid less money as women, we are paid less money as women. That doesn't mean that we can't advocate and fight for what is ours or should be ours, but you got to work with what you got. And working with what you got means planning with what's there, not planning for what you want, not counting your successes on what you should have. You can't plan your successes on things that you should have. And small goals are still victories. I think a lot of times when we move forward and we meet small goals financially, we don't take the time to really say, hey, good job. You know,
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
thousand haven't been able to save $1,000 before. You know what? That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah,
You can save $5 a day. And at the end of a year, you may have what? Of course, now I'm doing math without a calculator, but I'm going to say roughly $1,800. $1,800, you wouldn't have $5. Sometimes it's just taking the first step. And the first step doesn't have to be a $500, $5,000, $10,000 step. It can be a step as small as $2, a step as small as $5. It
Mm-hmm.
can be, people hate to hear this, but it can be, I'm going to take my lunch to work 2 days a week instead of buying lunch all 5 days a week.
Right. Or going to Starbucks every day.
Well, some people like their coffee, but
No,
you're
I
out.
get it. I'm a Starbucks fan. I'm a gold card member.
Look, this, these, this is not a need. I don't have to have these.
Right.
And so learning how to determine the difference between a need, an actual need, and a want, because somebody can say, well, you're a professional woman and your hands need to look nice. You know what? I take these off, put some fingernail polish on these, and they'll be just fine.
Right. Right.
Right. And so sometimes just resetting some of the expectations and recognizing sometimes that you really do have to sacrifice for a period of time. We live in this microwave community, and this is how we want it, right? Here, 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 here. But
Right.
sometimes you got to take the time to sacrifice. Short-term sacrifice equals long-term gain.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to shout out to Tamika Sales Atlanta. She said, I did a career change which reduced my pay to be more engaged with raising my children. I feel guilty. I don't make the same money that she used to make. My heart goes out to you because we women, and I'm a single mom, I struggle with that too. Like, I am a contract worker and I work in healthcare. And at one point in time in Atlanta, I couldn't buy a job. I literally could not find a job what I was doing. I'm a healthcare IT trainer. I could go anywhere across the world, across America, and find a job which would take me away from my daughter. And at one point in time, I did make that decision, and I felt extreme guilt about it. Extreme guilt, because I was struggling financially, just staying here, not being able to find work that would keep me here with her.
Hmm?
And I eventually brought her to where I was. Like, she was in a hotel with me, and people were like, are you going to take your daughter? Like, listen, this is what I've got to do as her mother. She's got to be with me if I'm going to make this work. And I was still paying bills here in Atlanta while I lived in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So we do what we have to do as parents and as women for our children. Like, don't feel guilty about that. I understand the guilt, but I applaud you for wanting to spend time with your children, considering what's going on in the world right now with all of the, people breaking into schools and killing kids and stuff like that. You want to spend as much time with your children as you possibly can. So I applaud you for making that choice.
I
And
do
even,
too.
yeah, absolutely. How do we create a new story, Patrice? How do we create a new story, a new financial story and experience with money? What steps can we take to do that?
Number one, you got to recognize that it's your story to craft. You are not a victim of your circumstance. So let's get out of what that victim mentality feels like. You are the crafter of your story. If you feel like you don't earn enough money, go get a second job. I don't know what that looks like for some people. What can you do a side hustle that you can work from home? Are there ways that you can generate additional income if that's something that you feel like you need to do? Remember, short-term sacrifice. I'm not saying you got to do it for 20 years. Not saying you got to do it for 30 years. But
Right.
can you, for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, to kind of get what you feel are your feet up underneath you? And with that second job, is the money you can put away, pay down debt, build a savings, start to invest while you still hold that first job? Are there things that you can do that way? But so much of it, in my opinion, is changing what your mindset is, because there's not anything that we can't do, but there are so many things that we tell ourselves we cannot do because we've allowed ourselves to be put into this box of limiting beliefs of
Yes.
what we're worth, what our value is, what we deserve, and what we can do with what we have.
Yes.
I truly believe that the mindset is the first step. The second step is get the education.
Yeah.
Figure out, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of resources out there that will allow you to do. I mean, you can go on LinkedIn, you can find a lot of resources there. Google, you can just Google things where you can get free courses that will not only beef up your resume to do things. You can start a side hustle, a side business. There's so many people during the pandemic, they realized that just working a regular job or working in corporate America might not cut it. So they go into business for themselves, and they've done better, as an entrepreneur in 1 year than they did for the last 10 years working in corporate America. So we definitely have to change that mindset. I'm so glad you talked about mindset, because speaking of women, I saw this the other day and I was like, wow, this is really, really crazy. And it was talking about how men, even with not having the experience, they will ask for more money when it comes to a job, even if they don't have the experience. But women will not ask for more money and negotiate and advocate for themselves when they have the experience and more.
That's correct. You are absolutely right. It's a very true statement. And again, some of that goes back to, we can call it imposter syndrome. We can call it not recognizing our value and our worth. We can call it a whole lot of things. And I'm a very outspoken and direct individual in the workplace. I am that way with the clients that I deal with in my 9 to 5, and I'm that way with my coaching clients. And so, I have been labeled a whole lot of things over the course of my career.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm okay being called a bitch if I'm standing up for the things that I know that are right for me.
Right. And I think that not advocating for yourself, especially when it's dealing with money, is tied to that money story that you
Absolutely.
learned growing up. Because if you don't feel like you're worthy of having it, then you will not advocate for yourself to get it.
And if you are in a position and they're offering you, and your place of employment is offering you a higher position, they value what you do. So make sure that you value what you bring to the table, and don't be afraid to be asked to be compensated for it. Don't be afraid
Exactly.
to be compensated for it. You're there for a reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you said that it's that money mindset shift. And what was the other thing that we could be doing to create our story?
Oh gosh. Shift your mindset. Start to learn the things you need. Start to learn the money and language. What's an asset? What's a liability? How does credit work? How does credit really work? Because you hear people talk about a FICO score. You hear people talk about, these payments and that. How does your credit work? And how does having good credit versus bad credit affect your ability to move when you are needing financing, whether it's to purchase a home or purchase a car or whatever the case may be? How does credit really work? How do those credit scores come together? What is, a good utilization of your credit limit? What does that look like? Let's talk about how can we save. So we're talking about a 401k. I have a 401k where I've worked. I've been in my full-time job with this company 12 or 13 years. And every year I have increased the percentage of my 401k deposit from the percentage that goes from my check to my 401k. I've increased it every year for the last 10 years. So that now I'm close to maximizing, but that money is there in my 401k, right? I have an IRA. How much money goes into that IRA? I think it is so important when you don't really know how to move in the money arena to get with a professional. Don't be afraid to, if it's money trauma, don't be afraid to talk to somebody like me. If it's just, how do I invest my money? How does this work? Don't be afraid to talk to a financial advisor, a financial planner. That is what they do for a living,
Right.
right? One of the things that I think I've seen with people who look like us is that we have an innate distrust for the banking and finance sector.
Absolutely.
I understand what it is. We've got to learn how to move in that bank and finance sector. I mean, we've got to learn how to navigate it.
Right.
Saving money in a mattress and putting it in a mason jar and burying it in a jar, that's not going to help you.
Right.
That way, a money tree doesn't grow out of that mason jar.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I got.
That's good information, because we need to know, how do we create that new story. And a lot of times we're too embarrassed to even ask how to create a new story, because we don't want to face our current day story.
Yep.
We don't want to face that current day story. So to the Heal Black Joy Tribe members, I hope you got some information out of this conversation, because this is such a wealth of information in this one woman here, this strategist, when it comes to our finances. What are you currently working on right now? I know you got a lot of things going. So talk to us about what you got going on in this financial space and everything else that you're doing.
Okay, I can do that. I recently, I'm in the process of getting ready to release a course that basically kind of helps work through money trauma. So I do have that going on. I am looking to get a few more investment properties in the real estate market.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting to the age now where retirement is starting to be on my mind. So I'm really looking for ways to generate passive income.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my friends call it mailbox money. So,
Mm-hmm.
in ways to grow investments there. I'm doing one-on-one coaching. I do work as like a financial accountability partner. If you've got the urge to spend, call me and let's talk about it before you hit that Amazon click cart and order now button, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doing one-on-one coaching because there are some people who the trauma's deep, the emotions are deep, and they really just want that one-on-one time.
Right.
And doing some of that as well.
Okay. Well, lady, I don't know how to thank you for this conversation, because it's such a conversation to have, especially in our community. We all have our own story when it comes to our finances and our money trauma story. A lot of us learned it from our family. We grew up, either overspending, or over hoarding money and trying to, hold on to it. And we have a scarcity mindset, or we have a guilt mindset, because we've either outgrown where our parents were financially, and we just feel like we're not deserving of it. So we just hold on to our money, or we don't show up and celebrate ourselves when we have those achievements. So this conversation was so very much so needed. So I have to thank you for sharing your expertise, sharing your wealth of knowledge with us, and sharing your story with us, and being honest about, the things that you went through, dealing with your credit card addiction. I You were honest about that. And I know that's going to resonate not only with me, but it's going to resonate with a lot of us, because a lot of times we don't want to talk about it, but we overspend. Like, we are the biggest consumers.
We do. We do. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity just to come on here and share that something that I said resonated with your Heal Black Joyers and anyone else who's jumped on it to just kind of be part of the conversation. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Everybody go follow Patrice right now. I have it pinned in the comments. It's at Bobo-Miles, Miles. And if you need to talk to somebody and have a financial accountability partner, she is your lady. Go hit her up right now. And someone said, congratulations on your new course. Absolutely. Congratulations on your new course.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm
Let
excited.
me know what we can do to put it out and tell everybody about it.
I will. I will get some links sent over to you, and got the private coaching groups going on with the course as well. So that's a little.
Okay. All right. I will send some people to you.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, you guys. And thank you to my Heal Black Joy tribe for coming in, tuning in as always every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at Heal Black Joy. I appreciate you. And I hope you guys are going to be healing your black joy. Have a good one.
Good night.
Good night.